The Philippines, a nation of more than 7,000 scattered islands, might seem dwarfed by the colossal presence of China. On the surface, it's a classic mismatch. A small, tropical archipelago facing off against the world's most populous country and its second-largest economy. The contrast is striking. One a patchwork of lush islands and vibrant communities, the other a sprawling landmass with cities that never sleep, and ambitions that stretch far beyond its borders. Yet, appearances can be deceiving. This archipelago holds a secret, a hidden power that could bring the Asian giant to its knees. Beneath the tranquil beauty of its turquoise waters and sun-drenched shores lies a strategic position that few nations can rival. The Philippines is more than just a collection of islands. It's a gatekeeper to one of the world's most vital maritime corridors. While lacking China's sheer economic or military might, the Philippines possesses a unique geographical advantage, one that places it squarely in the middle of China's maritime trade routes. Every day, thousands of ships carrying oil, raw materials, and finished goods thread their way past its shores, making the Philippines a silent sentinel over the arteries of Asian commerce. These routes, particularly those flowing through the South China Sea, are not just important to China, they are its economic lifeline. Over 60% of China's trade passes through these waters, connecting its factories to markets in Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Any disruption here would send ripples, if not waves, through the global economy. Should the Philippines choose to exert its influence, it could disrupt the flow of goods that fuel China's economic engine, sending shockwaves through the global market. Even a minor interruption could mean delays, shortages, and rising costs for everything from electronics to energy. The world's supply chains, already stretched thin, would feel the impact almost immediately. It's a David and Goliath scenario, but in this story, David might just have a few slingshots up his sleeve. The Philippines may not match China's ship or dollar for dollar, but its strategic location gives it leverage that far outweighs its size. In the high-stakes game of geopolitics, sometimes position is everything. The world has watched as these two nations have danced around each other, a delicate ballet of diplomacy and posturing. Each move is carefully calculated, with both sides aware of the stakes. Behind closed doors, negotiations simmer, while in public, tensions occasionally flare. But what if the music stopped? What if the Philippines decided to flex its muscles? The ramifications would be felt across the globe. In a world more interconnected than ever, the fate of a tiny archipelago could tip the balance of power, reminding us all that sometimes the smallest players can make the biggest waves. The South China Sea is not just a body of water, it is a vast, dynamic expanse that has shaped the destiny of nations for centuries. Stretching over 3.5 million square kilometers, it is a crossroads of commerce, culture, and power, connecting East Asia to the rest of the world. For China, the South China Sea is the economic artery that keeps its heart beating. It is the main channel through which the lifeblood of trade flows, linking Chinese factories and consumers to global markets. Every single day, a vast armada of cargo ships, tankers, and container vessels, laden with everything from crude oil and natural gas to electronics, machinery, and consumer goods, traverse these waters. These ships carry trillions of dollars worth of goods annually, making the South China Sea one of the busiest and most valuable maritime highways on the planet. For China, a nation whose economic engine is powered by both massive imports of raw materials and exports of finished products, these shipping lanes are nothing less than the very oxygen supply of its economic growth. The ports along China's coast are constantly buzzing with activity, as goods are loaded and unloaded around the clock. Disrupting this flow of goods would be akin to cutting off China's economic oxygen, leaving its factories idle, its cities deprived, and its people feeling the pinch. The consequences would ripple far beyond China, affecting global supply chains and economies worldwide. The numbers are staggering. Over 60% of China's maritime trade passes through the South China Sea, including vital energy imports that fuel its industries and manufactured exports that reach every corner of the globe. This makes the region absolutely indispensable to China's continued rise. This heavy reliance on these waters makes China incredibly vulnerable to any disruption. The Philippines, strategically positioned along these crucial maritime routes, holds a unique and powerful position, one that could potentially be used to exploit China's vulnerability, shaping the balance of power in the region. The Philippines, with its sprawling archipelago of over 7,000 islands, sits astride some of the most important maritime choke points in the South China Sea. These narrow passages are not just vital for regional navigation, they are the lifeblood of global commerce, with trillions of dollars worth of goods passing through each year. The country's unique geography gives it a strategic advantage, allowing it to monitor and potentially control the flow of ships moving between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Like a determined shepherd guarding a narrow mountain pass, the Philippines could effectively control the flow of traffic through these vital waterways. Even a modest show of force or increased vigilance could send ripples through the shipping industry, making every vessel think twice before passing unchecked. While its navy may be smaller than China's, it wouldn't take a massive fleet to disrupt the delicate balance of global trade. The mere presence of patrols, or the threat of inspections, could create uncertainty and hesitation among shipping companies. Imagine a scenario where the Philippine Navy, bolstered by alliances with neighboring countries like Vietnam and Malaysia, begins to exert its presence in these choke points. Increased patrols, stringent inspections, and coordinated maneuvers could amplify the pressure on Chinese shipping. Such regional cooperation would not only strengthen the Philippines' position, but also send a powerful message to Beijing about the risks of unchecked expansion. And if tensions were to escalate, the strategic deployment of sea mines or maritime barriers could significantly slow down, if not outright block, Chinese shipping lanes. Even the threat of such actions could force China to reroute its vessels, adding days or even weeks to delivery times. The impact would be immediate and far-reaching. Global supply chains, already stretched thin, could grind to a halt as ships pile up at sea, waiting for safe passage or new routes to open. Cargo ships, delayed and rerouted, would face mounting costs, disrupting carefully calibrated supply chains. The world would quickly feel the shockwaves, as everything from electronics to food supplies becomes more expensive and harder to find. The economic consequences for China would be swift and severe. The cost of shipping goods would skyrocket, forcing Chinese manufacturers to raise prices and, potentially lose their competitive edge in the global market. Delays in receiving raw materials would ripple through the Chinese economy, causing factory closures, layoffs, and a sharp decline in economic output. Foreign investors already wary of the geopolitical risks would likely pull back, further exacerbating the economic downturn. The Chinese government, facing social unrest and economic instability, would be forced to scramble for alternative routes and solutions, but honestly, the damage would be done. The once mighty Chinese economy would be brought low, not by a military invasion, but by a strategically placed pebble in its shoe. The Philippines holds another, even more potent weapon: a trade embargo. Imagine if the Philippines, emboldened by its strategic importance, decided to ban all Chinese products. This move would undoubtedly send shockwaves through both economies, a seismic event felt far beyond their shores. In the Philippines, the immediate impact would be undeniable. Shortages of essential goods from electronics to clothing would lead to price hikes and a decline in living standards. Businesses reliant on Chinese imports would face closures, leading to job losses and economic uncertainty. China would not sit idly by. Retaliation would be swift and multifaceted, targeting the Philippines' vulnerable economy. Sanctions could be imposed, cutting off vital exports or limiting Chinese investment. Tourism, a significant source of income for the Philippines, could be targeted with travel advisories or outright bans, dealing a significant blow to the service industry. China might also exert pressure on other ASEAN nations, urging them to isolate the Philippines and maintain economic ties with Beijing. However, this pressure could backfire, pushing the Philippines to seek new partnerships and diversify its economic ties. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and even Western nations could see an opportunity to strengthen their relationship with the Philippines, filling the void left by China. The Philippines may seem like a small player on the global stage, but its strategic location and willingness to take a stand give it an outsized influence. By leveraging its geography and forging strategic partnerships, the Philippines could disrupt the established order, forcing China to reconsider its assertive stance in the South China Sea. This is not to say that such action would be without risk or cost, but by recognizing its own power, the Philippines can ensure that its voice is heard and that its interests are protected. In the complex geopolitical chess game of the 21st century, even a seemingly insignificant pawn can, with the right move, checkmate a king.